Hi, my name is Matt Ellis, and with my Environment Agency colleague, Jessica Skeggs, we're going to take you through today's session on collaborative approaches to tackling urban flooding sustainably.
Thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica.
So what we'll cover in this session is we'll look at how Ignition is focused on delivering an investable program of SuDS retrofit. I'll spend a minute or two so looking at the broader approach on the project on SuDS, and I'll run through Ignition's work on attempting to drive investment and delivery of SuDS and how this has evolved into the collaborative co-delivery and co-investment approach that Jess will talk about later. And then I'll run through a series of questions, and what we're hoping to do here is prompt some thinking around where you are experiencing similar opportunities to create co-investment in SuDS, and we're really keen to understand where else is thinking like this, where else is emerging examples like Ignition. We really want to carry on the conversation in these areas and support each other in driving this work forward post the Ignition project. So Ignition started out looking at SuDS, and it started out with an ambition to look at how we would design and implement an investment case for urban SuDS retrofit, which would provide multiple benefit. And this process, which I'm going to cover in brief now, really start to drive forward the wider collaborative co-investment approaches that we're now focused on as well. We started out looking at the SuDS retrofit as a simple investment to save model, utilizing sustainable drainage to remove water from the United Utilities system would lead to a reduction in bill charges. We could then set something up that looks a little bit like this, where we have a special purpose vehicle or a climate adaptation services company in the middle, which would work with our site owners to implement SuDS, which would obtain the financial saving, and we could borrow against that financial saving over years to pay for the actual SuDS program. And what did we learn from this process? Well, firstly, it became apparent that the repayable finance element was a little bit too limited to fully fund the SuDS. And there were other issues and risks, which meant we needed to access more finance streams and blend them together. And this is something that would then look a little bit more like this. It's very similar to the previous model with a special purpose vehicle in the middle, still some repayable finance, but as you can see here, we needed to bring other forms of investment and other partners on board and blend that into a deliverable package. But in doing this work, we really understood that the scale of the challenge and the other factors that climate change and urban flooding presents us means that we needed to significantly increase the other approaches to SuDS delivery and SuDS investment, particularly in our urban areas. And the project itself, Ignition, was looking at a number of funding streams, as we call them. And it became apparent there was an area of linked SuDS in the public realm, which was really needed for co-delivery and co-investment. And it needed to work at a neighborhood scale, not a site scale. And it needed to work with a number of organizations who would provide capital, operational income streams, organizational capacity and activity. And this started to evolve into a specific focus on the collaborative and co-investment in neighborhood streetscape SuDS, which Jess will now run us through that example and that part of the project.
Thanks, Matt. As a quick overview, the main objective of this workstream was to explore how we can collaboratively bring together multiple beneficiaries in a way that can help finance SuDS at the scale needed for climate resilience. The focus will be on neighbourhood scale public realm interventions, helping to maximise the wider benefits these schemes could bring. This objective was broken down into three main aims. The first of which involved understanding the benefits of SuDS and therefore who are the beneficiaries. The second revolved around determining key overlapping priority locations for these stakeholders to co-invest. And finally, testing and trialling the approach through a case study, which will design and model the benefits of neighbourhood scale SuDS. I will now run through each of these aims in turn. To firstly understand the potential value proposition, the benefits and therefore beneficiaries of SuDS were explored. Using the Ignition evidence base as a starting point, a selection of the benefits of the SuDS were listed. Next, potential beneficiaries were recorded. After that comes the real challenge of linking the benefits and beneficiaries up and unpicking any potential value flows between them, which, as you can see from the screen, is quite a messy process. We instinctively know that there are links and benefits to all these organisations through the installation of SuDS, but the strength and monetary value, if any, isn't always easily obvious, and I'm sure there's some links we'll have missed. This challenge is one of the key barriers preventing collaborative SuDS installation at scale. Another barrier centres around funding and the allocation, pattern and drivers on investment for each of these key stakeholders, and the difficulty in trying to align this and their ongoing work programmes. Through this exercise, it was decided to concentrate on the water management benefits and the value this brings to the local authority, acting as lead local flood authority, and the sewerage undertaker. We also wanted to explore the benefits of partnering with grey infrastructure improvements, particularly highways, in a bid to create efficiencies, for example, surveying for both interventions at the same time, or digging up the road only once. So that department were also included as a key stakeholder in determining the case study area. In order to successfully attract neighbourhood scale public ground co-investment, the interventions need to be located in priority areas for all stakeholders involved and speak to their investment drivers. For this initial case study, we looked at areas across Manchester and Salford for possible collaboration between the target stakeholders. This process was undertaken at a strategic scale, and a schematic representation will be shown on screen. Engagement was undertaken with the stakeholders to source spatial data sets showing their risks and drivers for investment. Where a stakeholder had several key risks or drivers, these were combined to remove any potential bias that could skew the selected location in their favour. Each stakeholder's data was then overlain to see where they spatially correspond. As the layers build up, priority areas emerge with the greatest coincidence. These are the areas represented by the green circle. This process resulted in a series of potential locations across Manchester and Salford. As a single location was required, additional factors were considered along with further engagement with the relevant parties for them to rank interest in the areas highlighted. This supplementary screening resulted in Walkden in Salford being chosen as the case study area. Walkden is a small town within Salford lying around 7 kilometres northwest of Manchester city centre, and it's got a population of around 35,000 people. Parts of Walkden are at risk of both surface water and sewer flooding, and planned highway schemes are in the pipeline, meaning it hits the priorities of all our target parties. Whilst this strategic mapping identified locations for potential collaboration, it didn't focus on whether there was any opportunity for the SuDS to actually be installed. For this, a high-level virtual site visit was undertaken, which utilised aerial imagery and spatial data to identify areas in the public realm potentially suitable for SuDS. This process identified 26 potential locations. To validate the findings from the virtual site visit, an in-person visit was undertaken. This took a more detailed look at the topography, land use, land ownership, as well as water and wastewater flow paths, and resulted in 11 sites being deemed suitable for SuDS. The local authorities, sewerage undertakers and other stakeholders attended the visit, which allowed them to view the site and how the proposed interventions could help them achieve their organisational aims and objectives. Outline design was undertaken on each of these case study locations, with the suggested SuDS being a mix of bioretention basins, tree pits, rain gardens and pervious paving, covering an area of over 7,250 square metres. This includes 62 new trees and nearly 650 square metres of biodiverse planting. On screen is a conceptual design for one of the locations. The area is currently grassed with 2 mature trees on the northern edge. The suggested design is for a bioretention feature incorporating existing trees and planting 5 new ones in keeping with the species from the local area. Biodiverse planting will cover around a quarter of the feature, mainly around the edges. Water will enter this feature via both point and lateral flow to the north and west and discharge back into the sewer system to the south of the feature. Due to the slope, a series of check dams will be incorporated to help maximise the storage capacity of the SuDS and slow the flow of water into the sewer system further. Following on from outline designs on the scheme, a hydraulic modelling study was undertaken to understand the potential water management benefits as these are of particular interest to our target stakeholders. This involved modelling a series of rainfall scenarios, both with and without the proposed SuDS, to show the impacts of them. Some of the key benefits observed are shown on screen, the most notable being an over 50% reduction in the number of properties at risk of internal sewer flooding in the most frequent 1-in-1-year event throughout the case study area. The modelling study proved that SuDS had significant water management benefits locally and immediately downstream. However, due to the scale of the interventions in relation to the wider network, their impact on this was much more limited. We are currently working with the stakeholders to understand if there is any potential value associated with these benefits. Following on from the modelling study, a further benefits assessment was undertaken using the SuDS tool to understand the wider natural capital benefits. For the benefits assessed, this totals nearly 5.4 million, with the majority of this coming through an increased amenity and recreational benefits, showing the significant impact the scheme will bring to the local population. The walked-in case study has helped prove that there is a basis for collaborative investment in SuDS. It is hoped this case study will be able to attract investment in the future, but for this to happen, there are a series of next steps which still need to be undertaken. For example, we need to develop a business case to share with potential investors, consult with landowners around access and permission to install the SuDS, as well as investigating any potential legal implications, explore the funding opportunities with the target stakeholders and other beneficiaries, assess the feasibility of the proposed solutions through ground investigations and surveys, undertake detailed design to allow for construction, and finally build the SuDS and monitor the performance and benefits to help provide an evidence base for other projects in the future. Thanks. I'll hand back over to Matt now.
Thanks, Jess. And finally, just some points, as I said, to stimulate some thinking around your own experience or emerging opportunities for taking similar things forward in your own context. Essentially, I'm calling on people to think about where their walked-in is. I'm sure some of you will know where these already exist. Where are these examples, or are you spotting them emerging? Are there opportunities in your areas or in your organizations to start to co-create your own SuDS co-investment opportunity? And if you are seeing this now or you're actively thinking about it, then some questions. Who is involved or would need to be involved in this? How can you connect with them? What evidence and support do you need to actually have this conversation? Have you got a good idea of the benefits that they will receive from being involved in the SuDS project? And do you know what you're going to ask of them? Will you be asking for capital, their own capacity, coordination, or co-delivery? And how can these opportunities and partners actually be brought together practically to make this work? And what challenges, importantly, exist in doing this? And finally, as you're aware, the Ignition project closes in a month, but the SuDS retrofit financing co-investment co-delivery challenge doesn't stop in a month. So we're really, really keen to keep on and carry on the conversation here. I've included my email on this final slide. And if you want to get in touch, if you have emerging examples of co-investment, if you just want to understand Ignition's final resources and ongoing support, please do get in touch with me. We'd really love to carry on this conversation and journey with you.